The slap echoed through the cabin like a gunshot. Maya Rodriguez's cheek burned as shocked silence fell over the packed airplane. Her 6-month-old twins, Laura and Leo, had finally stopped crying, probably stunned by the sharp crack of palm against skin. The formula she'd accidentally knocked over still dripped from her tray table onto the worn carpet below. "Control your brats or I'll have you removed from this aircraft," flight attendant Karen Morrison hissed, her perfectly manicured hands still raised. Her voice carried through the cabin, ensuring every passenger witnessed Maya's humiliation. "You're clearly an unfit mother." Maya's vision blurred with tears. She'd been traveling for 8 hours with screaming babies, no help, and judgmental stares from every direction. Her ex-husband had abandoned them 3 months ago, leaving her to navigate this nightmare alone. The twins had been fussy since takeoff, and she'd been doing everything: feeding, changing, bouncing, singing softly. Nothing worked. "I'm trying my best," she whispered, voice breaking. Laura stirred in her lap, tiny fist grasping at Maya's tear-dampened shirt. "They're just babies. They don't understand. Your best isn't good enough." Karen leaned closer, her breath sharp with coffee and cruelty. "Some people shouldn't be allowed to reproduce." The words hit harder than the slap. Maya had heard them before, from her mother, her ex-husband, strangers on the street when the twins cried in grocery stores. But having them screamed at 30,000 feet, in front of dozens of witnesses, shattered something inside her. She ducked her head, shoulders shaking as she tried to shrink into her seat. The babies sensed her distress and began whimpering again. Maya's hands trembled as she reached for Leo's pacifier, knowing she was moments away from a complete breakdown. That was unnecessary. The voice came from seat 12B, low, controlled, but carrying an edge that made Karen step back instinctively. Maya glanced up through her tears to see the man who'd been watching her struggle since Denver. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and the most unusual golden eyes she'd ever seen. He hadn't offered to help earlier, but he hadn't glared at her either. He'd simply observed with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. Karen spun toward him, face flushed with indignation. "Excuse me? This passenger is disrupting. She's traveling alone with 2 infants." His tone remained level, but something dangerous flickered in those amber depths. "She's been patient, quiet, and doing everything possible to suit them. You, however, just assaulted a paying customer." "I did not assault. You struck her." He unbuckled his seatbelt and rose to his full height. Even in the cramped cabin, he seemed to fill the space. "In front of witnesses. Would you like me to call the air marshals, or would you prefer to apologize and find somewhere else to be?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Maya watched in amazement as the woman who'd terrorized her moments before suddenly looked small and uncertain. The flight attendant's eyes darted around the cabin, taking in the other passengers who were now watching her with disapproval instead of Maya. "The babies are crying," Karen said weakly. "Babies cry." The man's voice dropped lower. "It's what they do. What you did is assault. Choose your next words very carefully." Something passed between them, a look Maya couldn't interpret but made Karen go pale. The flight attendant backed away, smoothing her rumpled uniform. I need to check on other passengers," she mumbled, practically fleeing toward the front of the plane. Maya stared at her rescuer as he settled back into his seat. Laura had fallen asleep against her chest, and Leo was finally calm, sucking peacefully on his pacifier. The crisis had passed, but her cheeks still throbbed and her heart raced. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely audible over the engine noise. He turned those remarkable eyes on her, and she felt an odd flutter in her stomach. "Are you hurt?" She touched her cheek self-consciously. "It's fine. I'm used to it." His jaw tightened. "You shouldn't be." There was something in his tone, protective, almost possessive, that made her look at him more carefully. He was probably in his early 30s, wearing expensive clothes that looked oddly formal for air travel. His hands were large, strong, with calluses that suggested he worked with them despite his polished appearance. And those eyes, they seemed to see right through her. "I'm Maya," she said softly, shifting Leo to get more comfortable. "Maya Rodriguez." "Dante Blackwood." He glanced at the twins. "Laura and Leo?" She blinked in surprise. "How did you? You've been saying their names for the past 2 hours." A small smile softened his features. "Laura prefers being held upright, and Leo likes his back rubbed in circles." Heat flooded her cheeks. Of course he'd been listening to her desperate attempts at soothing them. "I'm sorry they disturbed you. I know how annoying it must be." "They didn't disturb me." His tone was firm. "And before you apologize again, crying babies on airplanes are as natural as turbulence. Anyone who gets upset about it has forgotten what it's like to be human." Maya felt tears threatening again, but these were different, relief mixed with gratitude. When was the last time someone had defended her instead of attacking? When had anyone looked at her struggles with understanding instead of judgment? "Where are you headed?" Dante asked, seeming to sense she needed a change of subject. "Pine Ridge. It's a small town in Montana." "I know it." She looked at him in surprise. "You do?" Something flickered across his features, too quick to interpret. "It's a memorable place." "You have family there?" "My grandmother left me a house." Maya adjusted Laura's position, breathing in her daughter's sweet baby scent. "I've never been there, but after my divorce, I needed somewhere to start over. Somewhere no one knows me." "Running away?" The question should have offended her, but his tone held no judgment. Just curiosity and something that might have been understanding. "Starting fresh," she corrected softly. "There's a difference." He nodded slowly. "Yes. There is." The plane hit a patch of turbulence, and Maya instinctively tightened her grip on the babies. Dante's hand shot out to steady her arm, a reflexive gesture that sent warmth racing through her despite the brief contact. "Sorry," he said, pulling back quickly. But not before she noticed his skin was unusually warm, almost feverish. "Are you feeling all right?" she asked. "You seem a little." "I'm fine." His response was too quick, too sharp. Then he seemed to catch himself and offered another of those small smiles. "I don't like flying much. Makes me restless." Maya could understand that. The confined space, the recycled air, the helpless feeling of being trapped in a metal tube hurtling through the sky, it would make anyone edgy. But there was something else about Dante's restlessness, something that reminded her of a caged animal. "How much longer?" she asked, checking her watch. "About an hour to Billings, then you'll need to drive to Pine Ridge." He paused. "Do you have a car waiting?" She shook her head. "I was planning to rent something. Though I'm not sure how that's going to work with." She gestured helplessly at the twins and their mountain of baby gear. "I could give you a ride." The offer hung between them, and Maya felt her pulse quicken. Everything her mother had drilled into her about stranger danger screamed warnings, but something deeper, some instinct she couldn't name, whispered that Dante Blackwood was the least dangerous person on this plane. Still, she had to think about Laura and Leo. "That's very kind, but I couldn't impose." "It's not an imposition. I'm headed that way anyway." "You live in Pine Ridge?" Again, that flicker of something across his features. "Nearby." The babies stirred, Laura making soft cooing sounds while Leo's pacifier slipped from his mouth. Maya caught it before it could hit the floor, earning an approving nod from Dante. "Good reflexes," he observed. "Necessity. You learn fast when you're outnumbered 2-1. She settled the pacifier back in Leo's mouth. "Are you sure about the ride?" "Pine Ridge is pretty remote, and with the babies." "I'm sure." His golden eyes met hers steadily. "Besides, after what happened with the flight attendant, I'd feel better knowing you got there safely." Something in his tone made her breath catch. There was protectiveness there, but also something else, something primitive and fierce that should have frightened her but somehow didn't. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Thank you." He nodded once, satisfied. We'll be landing soon. Try to get some rest. Maya leaned back in her seat, twins finally peaceful in her arms. Through the small window, she could see mountains rising in the distance, wild, untamed landscape that called to something deep in her soul. Pine Ridge was out there somewhere, along with her grandmother's house and the chance for a new beginning. She glanced at Dante, who was staring out his own window with an expression she couldn't read. There was something about him, something that made her feel safe for the first time in months. Maybe it was just gratitude talking, or maybe it was something more. Either way, as the plane began its descent toward Billings, Maya Rodriguez felt like she was flying toward her destiny. Chapter 2. The baggage claim carousel groaned to life with the mechanical where Maya had learned to dread. After 18 hours of travel delays, screaming babies, and public humiliation, she just wanted to collect her meager belongings and disappear into whatever anonymity Pine Ridge could offer. Laura fussed in the stroller while Leo dozed in the carrier strapped to Maya's chest. She'd managed to wrangle both car seats, the stroller, and 2 overstuffed diaper bags through the terminal, leaving her looking like a pack mule and feeling twice as ungainly. Other passengers gave her a wide berth, whether from sympathy or annoyance, she couldn't tell. She was wrestling with the stroller's wonky front wheel when that familiar voice made her freeze. Maya. She looked up to find Dante Blackwood approaching, moving with the fluid grace of a man completely comfortable in his own skin. He'd changed since the plane, gone was the expensive suit, replaced by dark jeans and a black Henley that emphasized his broad shoulders. He looked less businessman, more dangerous. Every survival instinct Maya had developed over the past 3 years screamed at her to run. I wanted to make sure you found everything okay, he said, those golden eyes scanning her overloaded luggage situation. Can I help? No. The word came out sharper than she intended. Maya fumbled with the stroller brake, her hands suddenly clumsy. No, thank you. I'm fine. Everything's fine. It wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. The stroller wheel was stuck, Leo was starting to wake up cranky, and this man, this attractive, powerful man, was looking at her with the same expression Ricardo used to wear. Like she was a problem to be solved, a situation to be managed. Maya, you don't have to. I said I'm fine. She yanked on the stroller so hard it tipped sideways, sending the diaper bag sliding toward the floor. Dante reached out to catch it, and Maya jerked backward like he'd tried to hit her. The sudden movement woke Leo fully, and his angry wail echoed through the baggage claim. Laura immediately joined him, their twin telepathy working overtime to create maximum chaos. Maya's face burned as other travelers turned to stare, again. Please, she whispered, tears threatening. Just leave me alone. Something flickered across Dante's features, hurt, maybe, or confusion. But he stepped back, hands raised in surrender. Of course. I'm sorry for bothering you. He turned and walked away without another word, leaving Maya feeling simultaneously relieved and inexplicably bereft. She told herself she'd done the right thing. Powerful men who swept in to help always wanted something in return. Ricardo had taught her that lesson thoroughly. By the time she'd collected her battered suitcases and loaded everything into a taxi, Maya had almost convinced herself she'd imagined the wounded look in Dante's golden eyes. The taxi driver, a grizzled man named Earl who looked like he'd been carved from Montana granite, took one look at her crying babies and broken stroller and shook his head sympathetically. Rough day, honey. Rough year, Maya muttered, bouncing Leo while trying to keep Laura's pacifier from hitting the floor. Can you take me to the cheapest hotel in town? Something clean but budget-friendly? Earl's weathered face creased in a grin. The Moonlight Inn. Clean as a whistle, prices won't break the bank, and Betty runs it like it's her own home. You'll be comfortable there. Maya sagged with relief. Perfect. The drive through Billings revealed a city trying to balance its rough-and-tumble past with modern growth. Maya watched strip malls and chain restaurants give way to older buildings and local businesses as Earl navigated toward what he assured her was the good part of town, but not the expensive part. The Moonlight Inn was a pleasant surprise. Instead of the rundown motor lodge she'd expected, Maya found herself looking at a charming two-story building with stone accents and flower boxes that actually contained live flowers. A wooden sign shaped like a crescent moon hung above the entrance, painted in deep blues and silver. "Told you Betty runs a good place," Earl said, helping her unload the luggage. "She's got a soft spot for folks traveling with little ones, too." Maya paid the fare, leaving a tip she couldn't really afford but Earl had earned. He waved off her thanks with typical Montana politeness and drove away, leaving her standing on the sidewalk with her life packed in 4 bags and 2 increasingly fussy babies. The lobby was even better than the exterior had promised. Warm lighting, comfortable furniture arranged in conversational clusters, and the smell of something delicious wafting from what looked like a small restaurant off to one side. A woman in her 50s emerged from behind the desk, her steel-gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and her face creased with genuine welcome. "You must be exhausted, honey," she said, taking in Maya's travel-stained appearance and crying twins. "I'm Betty Morrison, and I run this place. Let's get you checked in and settled before these little ones revolt completely." "Morrison." Maya's stomach dropped. "Are you related to Karen Morrison, the flight attendant?" Betty's expression darkened. "Unfortunately, yes. That's my sister-in-law, though we don't claim her on good days." "Why, oh, Lord. You're the young woman she caused trouble for on the flight, aren't you?" Maya nodded miserably, waiting for the rejection she was sure would come. Instead, Betty came around the desk and gently touched Laura's tiny hand. "That woman is a disgrace to the Morrison name and humanity in general. Don't you worry about her for 1 second. Now, let me see what I can do about getting you comfortable." She bustled back to her computer, fingers flying over the keys. "I've got a lovely corner room with a mini fridge and microwave. Usually runs $120 a night, but for someone dealing with Karen's nastiness, let's call it $60. I can't let you. Honey, at my age, I do what I want. Besides, I saw the whole thing on the news." Maya blinked. "The news?" "Someone filmed Karen's little tantrum and put it online. It's gone viral. Flight attendant assaults young mother. Corporate called this morning to let us know she's been terminated, and they're looking into pressing charges." Betty's smile was fierce. Sometimes karma works faster than usual. Relief and horror warred in Maya's chest. On one hand, Karen faced consequences for her actions. On the other hand, her humiliation was now public entertainment for millions of strangers. "The room comes with a continental breakfast," Betty continued, apparently reading her distress, "and if you're looking for work, I might have something. Our evening bartender just moved to Denver, and we need someone reliable. Nothing fancy, mostly beer and wine, simple cocktails. The pay's decent, and tips are good when the oil workers come through." Maya stared at her. "You'd hire me? Just like that?" "Honey, anyone who can keep their composure while dealing with crying babies and public assault has the patience for bartending. Plus, I've got a good feeling about you." Betty winked. "Call it intuition." An hour later, Maya was settled in the most comfortable hotel room she'd seen in years. The corner location meant windows on 2 walls, filling the space with afternoon light. The furniture was modest but clean, and someone had thoughtfully provided a pack-and-play crib along with basic baby supplies. Laura and Leo had finally settled into naps, giving Maya her first moment of quiet since Dallas. She stood at the window overlooking the parking lot and the street beyond, watching traffic flow past. This was it, her new beginning. No one here knew about Ricardo's cheating, her mother's constant criticism, or the whispered rumors that had followed her through her old neighborhood. Her phone buzzed with a text from Betty. "Market across the street has good prices on baby food and formula. Tell Jim I sent you, he'll make sure you get the family discount." Maya smiled, feeling something loosen in her chest. Maybe she could do this. Maybe Pine Ridge would be different. She was just gathering the courage to venture out for supplies when she spotted a familiar figure across the street. Dante Blackwood stood beside a sleek black SUV, phone pressed to his ear. Even from 2 stories up, she could see the sharp lines of his profile, the way he moved with predatory grace even while standing still. Maya jumped back from the window, heart racing. What were the odds he'd chosen the same hotel? In a city this size, it had to be coincidence. Right? She peeked out again, but he was gone. The SUV remained, though, and something about seeing it there made her skin prickle with unease. Paranoid, she muttered to herself. You're being paranoid. But when she ventured out an hour later with the twins in their stroller, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The market was exactly where Betty had promised, and Jim, a round man with kind eyes, indeed gave her the family discount after she mentioned the hotel manager's name. Betty's good people, he said, packing her groceries with care. You staying at the Moonlight long? I'm not sure yet. Maybe permanently, if things work out. Well, you picked a good place to land. Betty takes care of folks, and the Moonlight's been family-owned for 3 generations. None of that corporate nonsense, just good, honest hospitality. Maya loaded the groceries into the stroller's storage basket, amazed at how much baby supplies could cost. Her savings were dwindling faster than she'd hoped, making Betty's job offer even more crucial. The walk back to the hotel should have been simple, 2 blocks, mostly straight. But Laura decided to have a meltdown in the middle of the sidewalk, her cries drawing stares from passing pedestrians. When Maya stopped to comfort her, the stroller's broken wheel chose that moment to give up entirely, sending groceries tumbling across the concrete. Come on, she whispered, crouching to collect scattered formula cans while bouncing Laura. Please, not now. A can of peaches rolled toward the street, and Maya lunged after it, leaving the stroller unattended for just a moment. She looked up to find a teenager in a Billings High t-shirt holding it steady, preventing Leo from rolling into traffic. Thanks, she gasped, scrambling back with the wayward groceries. No problem. Wheels busted, huh? Maya nodded, close to tears again. Among other things. The kid, he couldn't be more than 16, helped her reload the bags. There's a repair shop 2 blocks over. Old Mike fixes everything, shopping carts, strollers, baby gear. He's cheap, too. I don't suppose he makes house calls? The teenager grinned. Actually, yeah. His grandson works at the Moonlight Inn. He could probably swing by later if you ask nice. Hope flickered in Maya's chest. Really? Sure thing. Tell whoever's at the desk that Josh from the market sent you. They'll know what to do. Maya thanked him profusely and managed to wrestle the broken stroller back to the hotel without further incident. Betty was at the desk when she arrived, and her face immediately creased with concern. Oh, honey, what happened? The stroller gave up, Maya said, trying to keep the exhaustion from her voice. A boy named Josh said someone here might know about repairs? Betty's expression brightened. Of course. Let me make a call. 20 minutes later, a wiry man in his 70s appeared with a toolbox and a smile. Mike Patterson, he introduced himself, already examining the wheel. My grandson said you might need some help. I can't afford much, Maya warned, watching him work with practiced efficiency. Don't worry about that right now. Let's get you mobile first, then we'll figure out the rest. As Mike worked, Maya realized she hadn't seen his grandson around the hotel. She mentioned this to Betty, who laughed. Oh, you wouldn't have met Danny yet. He works the night maintenance shift. Keeps different hours than most folks. Maya nodded, filing the information away. The kindness of strangers was something she'd have to get used to again. Ricardo had trained her to be suspicious of everyone's motives. Mike finished the repair in under an hour, testing the wheel thoroughly before declaring it good as new, maybe better. When Maya asked about payment, he waved her off. First repairs free for Moonlight guests. Betty's policy. After he left, Maya turned to Betty in amazement. Is this place real? Or did I die on that airplane and this is some kind of afterlife? Betty chuckled, returning to her paperwork. Honey, sometimes life just decides to cut you a break. Best not to question it too hard. That evening, as Maya got the twins settled for the night, she reflected on the day's unexpected kindness. The job offer, the discounted room, the free stroller repair, it felt too good to be true. But maybe, just maybe, Pine Ridge would be the fresh start she needed. She was closing the curtains when she saw the black SUV again, parked in the same spot across the street. This time, she was sure she glimpsed a figure in the driver's seat, but the tinted windows made identification impossible. Maya stepped away from the window, pulse quickening. Coincidence was one thing, but this felt deliberate. She thought about Dante's offer of help at the airport, the way he'd watched her on the plane, the timing of his appearance at baggage claim. "You're being ridiculous," she told herself firmly. "He's probably just staying somewhere nearby." But as she double-checked the door locks and pulled the curtains tight, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that her mysterious flight companion was closer than she'd realized. Chapter 3. 3 months later, Maya Rodriguez had built herself a life. It wasn't the life she'd planned: small apartment above a hotel bar, working nights while her babies slept in a makeshift nursery behind the front desk, but it was hers. She'd grown stronger, more confident, no longer jumping at shadows or expecting the worst from every interaction. "Laura, no." Maya lunged across the small apartment's living room as her daughter made a beeline for the electrical outlet. At 8 months old, Laura had discovered crawling with the enthusiasm of an Olympic sprinter, while her brother Leo preferred a more methodical approach to exploring their domain. Maya scooped up her adventurous daughter and settled both twins in their play area, a colorful kingdom of soft blocks and teething toys that took up most of the apartment's floor space. The Moonlight Inn had become more than just a job; it was home, family, sanctuary. "Time to get ready for work, babies," she murmured, kissing each dark head. Laura gurgled happily while Leo grabbed her finger with his chubby fist. The routine was well established now. At 6 o'clock, Maya would take the twins downstairs to Betty, who'd converted a storage room behind the front desk into the world's coziest nursery. The night desk clerk, Marcus, was a college student studying early childhood education who adored the babies and needed the extra income from babysitting. It was an arrangement that worked for everyone. "There are my favorite troublemakers," Betty cooed as Maya appeared with the twins. "Laura's been asking about those new guests in 204 all day." Maya raised an eyebrow. "She's 8 months old. She doesn't ask about anything. Tell that to the way she lights up whenever they walk by. That baby has excellent taste in people." Betty settled Laura on her hip while Leo contentedly chewed on a toy truck. "Speaking of which, your favorite customer made a reservation for tonight." Heat crept up Maya's neck. "I don't have a favorite customer." Betty's knowing smile was infuriating. Table 7, 8 o'clock, like clockwork. Maya had been hoping Dante Blackwood would eventually get bored and find somewhere else to drink. Instead, he'd become as regular as the sunset, appearing every Tuesday and Friday at exactly 8 o'clock, ordering the same whiskey neat, leaving the same ridiculously generous tip, and never once pushing for conversation beyond basic pleasantries. It was unnerving. And confusing. And maybe, just maybe, something she looked forward to more than she cared to admit. The Moonlight's bar occupied the hotel's ground floor corner, with windows overlooking the street and a cozy atmosphere that attracted both hotel guests and locals. Maya had discovered she was good at bartending, good at reading people, at knowing when someone wanted to talk and when they wanted to be left alone, at creating the kind of comfortable space where strangers became friends over shared drinks. She was wiping down glasses when Danny Patterson, Mike's grandson and the hotel's night maintenance man, ambled over with his usual grin. "Heard your mysterious regulars coming in tonight," he said, leaning against the bar. "He's not mysterious. He's just..." Maya paused, realizing she didn't actually know how to finish that sentence. "Quiet. Right. Quiet." Danny's grin widened. "Like a church mouse. If church mice drove cars that cost more than most people's houses and left $100 tips on $20 tabs. Maybe he's just generous." "Oh, he's generous, all right. Did you know he paid for the new playground equipment behind the hotel?" Anonymous donation, but Marcus saw him talking to Betty about it last month. Maya's cloth stilled on the glass. "Why would he do that?" "Beats me. Maybe he likes kids." Danny's expression turned sly. Or maybe he likes their mom. Don't be ridiculous. He barely speaks to me. Sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous. Something in Danny's tone made Maya look at him sharply, but he was already moving away, whistling under his breath. She shook her head and continued her prep work, trying not to think about golden eyes and generous tips and anonymous playground donations. The evening crowd trickled in gradually, a few hotel guests, some locals finishing their workday, a couple celebrating their anniversary. Maya moved behind the bar with practiced efficiency, mixing drinks and making conversation, genuinely enjoying the work. At exactly 8 o'clock, Dante appeared. He moved through the bar like he belonged there, nodding politely to other patrons, taking his usual seat at table 7 with a clear view of both the bar and the street. Maya felt his presence like a physical weight, her skin prickling with awareness as she poured his whiskey. "Good evening," she said, setting the glass before him. "How was your day?" "Productive." His golden eyes met hers briefly. "And yours?" "Chaotic. Laura's discovered she can crawl faster than I can move, and Leo's decided everything in the apartment needs to be taste-tested." The corner of his mouth quirked upward, not quite a smile, but close. "They're getting big." Maya blinked in surprise. "You've seen them?" "Betty brings them through the lobby sometimes when I'm checking in." He lifted his glass, inhaling the whiskey's aroma. "Laura has your eyes." The casual observation sent warmth flooding through her chest. She'd grown used to people commenting on the babies. It was impossible to miss them in a hotel this size, but something about the way Dante said it felt different. "Personal." "She has my stubborn streak, too," Maya said, then immediately wondered why she was sharing that information with a virtual stranger. "Good. She'll need it." Before Maya could ask what he meant by that, Marcus appeared at the bar, practically vibrating with excitement. "Maya. Did you hear? The city council approved the new childcare center proposal. They're breaking ground next month, and it's going to have income-based pricing." He beamed at her. "You'll actually be able to afford professional daycare." Maya's heart leaped. She'd been worried about what would happen when the twins got too active for Betty's makeshift nursery arrangement. "That's wonderful. Who's funding it?" "Anonymous donor again," Marcus said. "Same person who's been quietly improving half the town. New equipment for the fire department, computers for the library, scholarships for high school kids. Whoever it is has deep pockets and a big heart." Maya glanced toward table 7, but Dante was studying his drink with apparent fascination. Still, something about the set of his shoulders suggested he was listening to every word. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of customers and conversation. Maya found herself hyper-aware of Dante's presence, stealing glances when she thought he wasn't looking. He nursed his single whiskey for 2 hours, occasionally checking his phone but mostly just watching. Not her specifically, at least, she didn't think so, but the room, the people, everything happening around him. When last call came, he was one of the few remaining customers. Maya was cleaning glasses when he approached the bar to settle his tab. "Quiet night," he observed, placing exact change plus his usual generous tip on the wooden surface. "They're not all like this. Friday and Saturday can get pretty wild. You handle it well." "Thanks." Maya hesitated, then decided to test the waters. "Can I ask you something?" His posture tensed almost imperceptibly. "Of course. Why do you come here?" "I mean, there are fancier places in town. Places that probably have better whiskey." For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "It's peaceful here." "Safe." "Safe from what?" Something flickered in his golden eyes. Pain, maybe, or loneliness. Expectations. Before Maya could process that cryptic response, he was gone, moving through the bar with that same fluid grace she remembered from the airport. She watched through the window as he climbed into the familiar black SUV, wondering what kind of expectations a man like Dante Blackwood might be running from. "He's not married, you know." Maya spun around to find Betty standing in the doorway, a knowing smile on her weathered face. "I wasn't." "Honey, I've been watching people fall in love for 50 years. I know the signs. Betty moved into the bar, straightening chairs with practiced efficiency. He's single. No girlfriend either, as far as anyone knows. How could you possibly know that? Small town. People talk. Betty's smile widened. Plus, I asked around. Betty. What? You're like the daughter I never had, and he's clearly smitten. A woman's got to look out for her own. Maya felt heat creeping up her neck again. He's not smitten. He's just polite. Polite men don't learn the names of bartenders' babies. They don't ask about crawling milestones or remember that Laura has your eyes. Betty paused in her chair, straightening. And they definitely don't anonymously fund childcare centers. Maya's heart stuttered. You think he's the anonymous donor? Honey, I don't think anything. I know. Betty's expression grew serious. That man has been quietly taking care of this whole town for months, and he started right after you arrived. Draw your own conclusions. The implications of that statement sent Maya's mind reeling. If Dante was behind the mysterious donations, if he'd been helping not just her but the entire community. Why would he do that? Maybe you should ask him. Maya shook her head firmly. I can't. I mean, what if you're wrong? What if he's just some rich guy with a guilty conscience? And what if I'm right? Betty challenged. What if he's a good man who's been waiting 3 months for you to see past whatever fear is keeping you from giving him a chance? That night, as Maya lay in her narrow bed listening to the twins' peaceful breathing, she couldn't stop thinking about Betty's words. Or about the way Dante had looked when she'd asked about expectations, like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. She thought about his quiet presence in the bar, his gentle questions about the babies, the way he never pushed for more conversation than she was willing to give. She thought about anonymous donations and playground equipment and childcare centers that appeared exactly when the community needed them most. And she thought about golden eyes that seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed walls to the woman she was trying to become. The next morning brought its usual chaos, Laura attempting to eat everything she could reach while Leo practiced his newly discovered talent for throwing things. Maya was wrestling them into clean clothes when Betty knocked on her door. Sorry to bother you, honey, but there's something downstairs you need to see. Curious, Maya loaded the twins into their double stroller and followed Betty to the lobby. There, arranged in a neat display near the front desk, was the most beautiful collection of baby gear she'd ever seen: high-end stroller, car seats, play yard, toys that looked both educational and fun. What is this? Maya breathed. Anonymous donation, Betty said, but her smile was pure mischief. Left with a note saying it was for the family in 2A. That would be you. Maya's knees went weak. The items probably cost more than she made in 6 months. I can't accept this. It's too much. According to the note, it's not a gift. It's an investment in the community's future. Betty handed her a small card. That's a direct quote. Maya stared at the elegant handwriting, her heart hammering against her ribs. An investment in the community's future. It sounded like something Dante might say, formal, thoughtful, and just cryptic enough to maintain his anonymity. Betty, she said slowly, what exactly do you know about Dante Blackwood? The older woman's expression grew carefully neutral. I know he's a good man with a lot of responsibility. I know he cares about people, even when he pretends not to. And I know he's been alone for a long time. That's not an answer. Honey, some stories aren't mine to tell. But if you really want to know who Dante Blackwood is, maybe you should try asking him instead of running away every time he gets close. Maya looked down at Laura and Leo, who were staring wide-eyed at their new toys. Whatever game Dante was playing, whatever his reasons for the anonymous generosity, one thing was becoming clear: he wasn't going anywhere. And maybe, just maybe, neither was she. Chapter 4. At 15 months old, Laura and Leo Rodriguez had become the Moonlight Inn's unofficial welcoming committee, tiny ambassadors of chaos who could charm the grumpiest guest into smiling. They'd also become escape artists of Olympic caliber. Maya discovered this fact on a busy Friday evening when she turned away from the bar for exactly 30 seconds to mix a complicated cocktail, only to hear delighted squeals coming from the dining area. "Oh no," she breathed, abandoning the half-made drink to peer around the corner. The twins had somehow managed to climb out of their supposedly secure playpen behind the bar, a feat that should have been impossible given their height and the pen's design. Laura, ever the adventurer, was toddling toward the occupied tables with the determined gait of someone on an important mission. Leo followed close behind, his chubby legs pumping as he tried to keep up with his sister. "Laura." "Leo." Maya called, but her voice was lost in the Friday night chatter. She started around the bar, weaving between servers and customers, her heart hammering as she watched her daughter zero in on one particular table. Table 7. Of course. Dante Blackwood sat in his usual spot, whiskey glass halfway to his lips, golden eyes widening as 15 months of pure determination barreled straight toward him. Maya expected him to look alarmed, maybe signal for help or at least move his drink out of reach. Instead, he carefully set down his glass and watched Laura's approach with something that looked suspiciously like amusement. "Hi," Laura announced as she reached his table, tiny hands slapping against his knee. Her vocabulary consisted of approximately 6 words, but she wielded them with devastating effectiveness. "Hello," Dante replied gravely, as if he were greeting a business associate rather than a toddler wearing mismatched socks and a onesie decorated with dancing bananas. Leo arrived moments later, slightly out of breath from his sprint across the bar. He took one look at the tall stranger and his face split into the kind of smile that had been melting hearts since birth. "Up," he demanded, raising his arms in the universal toddler signal for immediate elevation. Maya finally broke free from the crowd of customers just in time to see Dante, serious, mysterious, probably wealthy Dante, actually laugh. Not a polite chuckle or restrained smile, but a genuine, delighted laugh that transformed his entire face. "I don't think your mother would appreciate that," he told Leo, but his tone was gentle, amused. "Up. Up." Leo was undeterred, grabbing fistfuls of Dante's expensive-looking pants and attempting to scale him like a very well-dressed mountain. "Leo, no." Maya rushed forward, mortification burning her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. They're usually better contained. I don't know how they got out." "It's fine," Dante said, and to her amazement, he actually helped Leo climb onto his lap. The toddler settled there like he belonged, immediately fascinated by the buttons on Dante's shirt. Laura, not to be outdone, had managed to climb onto the chair across from them and was now standing on the seat, swaying dangerously as she reached for Dante's water glass. "Laura, sit down," Maya commanded, moving to steady her daughter. But Laura had other plans. "Peek," she announced, and promptly covered her eyes with her hands. Maya waited for Dante to look confused or annoyed. Instead, he covered his own eyes with one hand while keeping the other securely around Leo's waist. "Where did Laura go?" he asked in an exaggerated puzzled tone. Laura giggled and uncovered her eyes. "Boo! There she is." Dante's mock surprise was so convincing that Laura dissolved into delighted laughter, immediately covering her eyes again. Maya stood frozen, watching this powerful, intimidating man play peekaboo with her daughter while her son contentedly explored his shirt buttons. Other patrons had noticed the scene, their conversations pausing as they watched with indulgent smiles. "Aren't they precious?" she heard someone murmur. "He's so good with them," another voice added. The praise should have warmed her heart. Instead, it sent ice shooting through her veins. Ricardo had been good with children too, when other people were watching. He'd been charming, playful, the kind of man strangers complimented on his natural way with kids. He'd played games and told jokes and made Maya believe she'd found someone who could love her babies as much as she did. Until the observers left and his mask slipped. The memory hit her like a physical blow, Ricardo's hands, so gentle in public, leaving bruises where no one could see. His voice, so warm when others were listening, turning cold and cruel behind closed doors. The way he'd used her love for the twins against her, threatening them when Maya tried to fight back. "No," she whispered, then louder, "no." Every head in the vicinity turned toward her, but Maya only saw Dante's startled expression as she swept Leo from his lap and scooped Laura off the chair. "I'm sorry," she said, backing away with both babies clutched against her chest. "They shouldn't have bothered you. It won't happen again." "Maya, it's fine. They weren't bothering. I said it won't happen again." Her voice cracked on the words, and she could feel tears threatening. Laura squirmed in her grip, confused by the sudden change in mood, while Leo began to fuss. Maya turned and fled toward the bar, depositing both babies back in their playpen with shaking hands. She grabbed paper towels and began scrubbing already clean surfaces, desperate for something to do with her hands. "Honey, what's wrong?" Betty appeared at her elbow, concern creasing her weathered features. "Nothing. Everything's fine." Maya's voice was too bright, too brittle. "The twins got out somehow. I need to figure out how to secure the playpen better. Maya. I should get back to work. Friday nights are busy." But when she looked toward table 7, Dante was gone. His glass sat empty, money tucked neatly beneath it, exact change plus his usual generous tip, as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't just played with her children like he genuinely enjoyed their company. As if he hadn't looked at Leo and Laura with something that might have been affection. Maya's hands shook as she cleared his table, hating herself for the disappointment that mixed with her relief. She was protecting her babies. That's what good mothers did, they kept their children safe from men who seemed too good to be true. "You want to tell me what that was about?" Danny Patterson materialized beside her, his usual easy grin replaced by confusion. "I don't know what you mean." "Maya, the man was playing peekaboo. Not exactly threatening behavior. You don't understand." Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. "Men like that, they're charming in public. It's what they do." Danny's expression softened. "Hey, what happened to you before you came here?" "Because whatever it was, it's got nothing to do with Dante. You don't know him." "Actually, I do. Better than you think." Danny glanced around, then leaned closer. "Look, I can't tell you everything because it's not my story to tell, but that man has never hurt anyone who didn't deserve it. And he sure as hell would never hurt a kid." "How can you possibly know that?" "Because I've seen him with children before. At the community center, at the park. He doesn't just donate money, Maya, he volunteers. Reading programs, after-school activities. Kids gravitate to him because they can sense he's safe." Maya wanted to argue, but the conviction in Danny's voice gave her pause. "Then why doesn't he tell me that himself?" "Maybe because every time he tries to get close, you run away." The words hit their mark, but Maya's defenses were too strong to crumble completely. "I'm protecting my children." "From what?" "A man who's been nothing but respectful to you for months. Who's been quietly making this whole town better." Danny's frustration was evident. "Maya, I get that someone hurt you. But you can't punish every man you meet for one asshole's mistakes." Before Maya could respond, a commotion erupted near the hotel's entrance. Raised voices, the sound of something crashing, and then Betty's sharp command, "That's enough." Maya and Danny rushed toward the lobby to find a scene of chaos. A man in his 30s, drunk, angry, and built like a linebacker, was shouting at Marcus while hotel guests huddled in corners. The night clerk looked terrified but was trying to maintain professional composure. "I don't care what your policy says," the drunk man bellowed. "I want my key card fixed now, or I'm going to." "Sir, please lower your voice," Marcus said, voice shaking. "If you'll just let me." The man grabbed Marcus by the shirt, and Maya's blood turned to ice. In the playpen behind the front desk, she could see Laura and Leo. She'd moved them there when the bar got busy, watching the scene with wide, frightened eyes. "Get your hands off him." The voice was quiet, controlled, but it cut through the chaos like a blade. Dante stood in the lobby's entrance, and Maya had never seen him look like this. Gone was the polite customer, the gentleman who'd played peekaboo with her babies. In his place stood someone dangerous, predatory, barely contained violence radiating from every line of his body. The drunk man released Marcus and spun around, swaying slightly. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who's asking nicely," Dante said, moving closer with that fluid grace Maya had noticed on the airplane. "Let go of the kid and walk away." "Or what?" Dante smiled, and it was nothing like the warm expression he'd worn while playing with the twins. This smile was all teeth and promise of pain. "Or I'll make you." Maya had seen bar fights before, quick, messy affairs that usually ended with someone calling the police. This felt different. This felt like watching a wolf circle its prey. The drunk man must have sensed it too, because some of his bravado faded. But alcohol made him stupid, and he took a swing at Dante instead of backing down. It was over in seconds. Dante moved like liquid lightning, catching the man's fist, twisting his arm behind his back, and depositing him face first on the lobby floor with minimal apparent effort. The drunk groaned once and went still. "Danny, call the police," Dante said calmly, as if he'd just commented on the weather. "Betty, are you all right?" "Fine, honey. Thanks to you." Betty was checking on Marcus, who looked shaken but uninjured. Maya stood frozen, watching Dante secure the unconscious man with movements that spoke of training and experience. He wasn't even breathing hard. When the police arrived 10 minutes later, they greeted Dante by name. "Another one, Mr. Blackwood?" Officer Jenkins asked, surveying the scene. "He assaulted a hotel employee. There are witnesses." As they loaded the drunk man into the patrol car, Maya found herself studying Dante with new eyes. The way the police deferred to him, the casual competence with which he'd handled the situation, the controlled violence that still hummed beneath his calm exterior. Who was Dante Blackwood, really? And why did watching him protect Marcus and the other guests make her feel safer instead of more afraid? She was still pondering those questions when Dante approached the front desk. Laura and Leo had calmed down after the excitement, but they perked up when they saw him, tiny hands reaching through the playpen slats. "Hi." Laura called out happily, apparently having already forgotten Maya's earlier panic. Dante's fierce expression softened instantly. "Hello, little one." He looked up at Maya, and she saw uncertainty in those golden eyes. "Are you all right?" Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. She wanted to apologize for her earlier behavior, to explain about Ricardo and her fears, but the words stuck in her throat. "The children weren't frightened?" he asked. "They're fine. Thank you. For what you did." Something shifted in his expression, hope, maybe, or relief. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Maya said quietly. "They wouldn't." For a moment, they just looked at each other across the lobby while Laura babbled happily and Leo tried to climb the playpen walls. Maya felt something cracking inside her chest, some wall she'd built to keep the world at bay. Then Dante nodded once and headed for the exit, leaving Maya to wonder if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life by pushing away the one man who might actually be worth the risk. Chapter 5. 3 weeks later, Maya had perfected the art of avoiding Dante Blackwood while he sat 15 feet away from her. It was a talent born of desperation and sheer stubborn will. She'd memorized his schedule, Tuesdays and Fridays, 8 o'clock sharp, and arranged her shifts accordingly. When avoidance was impossible, she delegated. Danny served his drinks. Marcus took his payment. Betty handled his small talk. Maya stayed behind the bar, mixing cocktails and pretending she couldn't feel those golden eyes tracking her every movement. At 18 months old, Laura and Leo had other ideas about this arrangement. "Dada!" Laura shrieked with delight as Dante walked into the bar on a particularly hellish Tuesday evening. She was sitting in her high chair near the service station, cheerfully destroying a banana while Maya tried to inventory liquor bottles. Maya's hand slipped, sending a bottle of premium vodka crashing to the floor. The sound of shattering glass made half the bar turn to stare, including Dante, whose expression shifted from polite greeting to immediate concern. "Dada! Dada!" Leo joined his sister's enthusiastic welcome, bouncing in his own high chair and clapping sticky hands together. He's not," Maya dropped to her knees, frantically gathering glass shards while her face burned with mortification. They call everyone that. The mailman, Danny, the guy who delivers beer. It doesn't mean anything. This was a complete lie. The twins had never called anyone Dada, except Dante, a fact that had been driving Maya slowly insane for the past month. Their vocabulary had exploded recently. They could say mama, up, no, cookie, and approximately 15 other words. But Dada was reserved exclusively for the tall, mysterious man who haunted their mother's dreams. Dada. Laura threw her remaining banana in Dante's direction, missing him by several feet but conveying her message clearly. Maya wanted to disappear into the floor. Or possibly move to another country. Instead, she kept picking up glass while fighting the urge to cry. It had been the day from hell even before Dante's arrival. Both twins were teething, which meant they'd been cranky, clingy, and determined to chew on everything in sight. The washing machine in her apartment had chosen this morning to give up completely, flooding her tiny kitchen and leaving her with no way to clean the mountain of baby clothes and bibs that accumulated daily. 3 different customers had complained about everything from the music volume to the temperature of their drinks, and the ice machine had broken down just as the evening rush began. Maya was running on 4 hours of sleep, 2 cups of coffee, and the last shreds of her sanity. Let me help. Dante's voice was close, too close, and Maya looked up to find him crouched beside her, carefully collecting glass shards. Don't. The word came out sharper than she intended. You'll cut yourself. I'm careful with sharp things. There was something in his tone that made her pause, but before she could analyze it, Danny appeared with a broom and dustpan. I've got this, he said, shooting Dante a meaningful look. Why don't you two talk? Maya scrambled to her feet, brushing glass dust from her jeans. There's nothing to talk about. I need to get back to work. She turned toward the bar, but Dante's voice stopped her. Maya. Something in the way he said her name, gentle, patient, tinged with what might have been sadness, made her freeze. I know you've been avoiding me. I haven't been. Danny's been serving my drinks for 3 weeks. Marcus handles my tab. Betty asks about my day. Those golden eyes met hers steadily. You won't even look at me. I'm busy. You're hiding. The accusation hit home, and Maya felt her defenses slam into place. I'm not hiding. I'm working. Some of us have responsibilities. Dada. Leo called from his high chair, apparently feeling left out of the conversation. Maya's composure cracked a little more. Stop calling him that. He's 18 months old, Dante said quietly. He doesn't understand. Exactly. He doesn't understand that you're not his father. That you're just some customer who'll disappear when you get bored. Maya's voice was rising, and she could see other patrons starting to stare. He doesn't understand that getting attached to people who don't stay is a really bad idea. Dante's jaw tightened. Who says I'm going anywhere? Everyone leaves. The words slipped out before Maya could stop them, raw and honest and completely humiliating. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Dante stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. I'm not everyone. Right. Maya let out a bitter laugh. You're the mysterious stranger with more money than God who shows up twice a week to drink overpriced whiskey and watch the poor single mother struggle with her babies. Very original. Something flickered across his features, hurt, maybe, or frustration. Is that really what you think? I think you feel sorry for me. I think you see some pathetic woman who got knocked up and abandoned, and it makes you feel good to help out. Charity work for your conscience. Maya. Well, I don't need your pity. Her voice cracked on the words. I don't need anonymous donations or playground equipment or mysterious repairs that get done overnight. I don't need you swooping in to save me from drunk customers or fix my problems. I can take care of myself and my children just fine. The bar had gone completely quiet now. Even Laura and Leo had stopped their chatter, sensing the tension in the air. Maya could feel dozens of eyes watching, waiting to see how this would play out. Dante stood perfectly still, his expression unreadable. What if it's not pity? Then what is it? What if you what? Maya's control finally snapped completely. What if you decide I'm worth keeping around for a while? What if you play house with us until something better comes along? What if you make my children love you and then break their hearts when you remember you don't actually want this life? She grabbed the whiskey sour she'd been making for another customer, perfectly crafted, with a delicate foam top and a maraschino cherry, and before rational thought could intervene, poured the entire drink directly over Dante's head. The liquid hit him like a golden waterfall, soaking his dark hair and running down his face in rivulets. Whiskey dripped from his chin onto his expensive shirt while the cherry bounced off his shoulder and rolled across the floor. The bar went tomb silent. Maya immediately wanted to take it back, to somehow reverse time and swallow the hurt and fear that had driven her to such a spectacular display of self-destruction. But it was too late. The damage was done. Dante stood motionless for a long moment, whiskey dripping steadily onto his shoes. Then he slowly reached up and wiped his face with the back of his hand. I deserve that, he said quietly. The simple acknowledgement somehow made everything worse. Maya had expected anger, demands for her firing, maybe even retaliation. Instead, she got calm acceptance and those golden eyes full of understanding she didn't deserve. Dante, But he was already moving, walking toward the exit with that same fluid grace despite being soaked in alcohol. He paused near the twins' high chairs, and Maya held her breath. Goodbye, Laura. Goodbye, Leo. Dada? Laura's voice was confused, questioning. Dante's shoulders tensed, but he didn't turn around. A moment later, he was gone, leaving Maya standing in a puddle of whiskey and her own regret while the entire bar stared at her in stunned silence. Well, Betty said finally, appearing at Maya's elbow with a bar towel. That was dramatic. Maya took the towel with shaking hands, kneeling to clean up the mess she'd made. I know. I'll pay for his dry cleaning. And the drink. And probably find a new job because he probably owns this place too. Honey, he does own this place. Maya's hands stilled. What? The Moonlight Inn. The whole chain, actually. Has for about 5 years now. Betty's voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes were kind. And before you panic, he's not going to fire you. That man's been in love with you since the airplane, and getting doused in whiskey isn't going to change that. He's not in love with me. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. He can't be. Why not? Because men like him don't fall for women like me. Betty crouched beside her, lowering her voice. Maya, what happened to you before you came here? Because whatever it was, it's eating you alive. Maya's throat tightened. His name was Ricardo. He was charming, successful, said all the right things. Made me believe I was special, that we were building something real together. And once the twins were born, once I was trapped, he showed me who he really was. Maya's hands clenched the towel. He used my love for Laura and Leo against me. Said if I ever tried to leave, he'd make sure I never saw them again. That no court would give custody to an unfit mother with no family, no money, no support. Understanding dawned in Betty's eyes. So when you see Dante being kind to your babies, I see Ricardo. I see how he used to play with them when people were watching, how gentle he could be when it served his purposes. Maya wiped at her eyes, frustrated by the tears that wouldn't stop coming. I know it's not fair to Dante. I know he's not Ricardo. But I can't seem to stop myself from running every time he gets close. Honey, running's not going to fix this. I know. Maya looked toward the door where Dante had disappeared. But I don't know how to stop. Maybe start with an apology? Maya nodded, though the thought of facing him after what she'd just done made her stomach clench with anxiety. She'd humiliated him in front of a room full of people, accused him of pity and manipulation, and literally thrown a drink at him. And he'd said he deserved it. Mama? Laura's voice was small, confused. Dada?" Maya's heart broke a little more. She stood and moved to the high chairs, gathering both babies into her arms despite their sticky hands and banana-covered faces. "Dada had to go, sweetheart." "Dada come back?" Maya closed her eyes, breathing in the familiar scent of baby shampoo and innocence. "I don't know, baby. I really don't know." But as she held her children and felt the weight of the bar's collective stare, Maya realized she wanted him to come back more than she'd wanted anything in years. The question was whether she'd destroyed any chance of that happening when she'd poured her fear and self-protection all over his head along with the whiskey sour. Chapter 6. Maya woke up feeling like she'd been hit by a truck, then run over by a second truck for good measure. Her throat felt like sandpaper, her head pounded with each heartbeat, and when she tried to sit up, the room spun like a carnival ride. The twins were still asleep in their cribs, but she could already hear Laura starting to stir with the soft whimpers that meant she'd be demanding breakfast soon. "Come on, Rodriguez," Maya muttered to herself, forcing her legs over the side of the bed. "You've handled worse than a little cold." But as she stood, her knees buckled and she had to grab the dresser to keep from falling. This wasn't a little cold. This was the flu in all its miserable glory, and she had exactly 0 time for it. Laura's whimpers escalated to full-blown crying, which immediately triggered Leo's sympathetic wails. Maya stumbled to their cribs, scooping up both babies despite the way the movement made her head spin. "Shoo, it's okay," she whispered, her voice barely a croak. "Mama's here." But Mama felt like death warmed over, and the twins seemed to sense something was wrong. Laura fussed constantly during her morning bottle, while Leo kept touching Maya's flushed face with worried little hands. By noon, Maya's fever had climbed high enough that she was seeing spots. She'd managed to feed the babies and change them, but basic tasks felt monumentally difficult. When Betty called up to check on her, Maya tried to sound normal. "I'm fine," she lied, swaying on her feet while Laura tugged at her pajama pants. "Just a little tired." "Honey, you sound like you've been gargling gravel." "Are you sick?" "Maybe a little. But I can work tonight." "I'll be fine by." "Absolutely not. You're staying in bed." "Betty, I can't afford to miss a shift. The twins need their mother healthy. Danny can cover the bar, and Marcus will help with customers. Rest." Maya wanted to argue, but another wave of dizziness hit her and she had to sit down abruptly on her tiny couch. "Okay. Maybe just tonight." The afternoon passed in a haze of fever dreams and crying babies. Maya did her best, but every task felt like climbing Mount Everest. Changing diapers left her exhausted. Making bottles required multiple rest breaks. By evening, she was running purely on maternal instinct and stubborn will. Laura and Leo seemed to catch her mood, growing increasingly fussy as the day wore on. They refused their afternoon nap, knocked over their juice cups, and began the kind of synchronized crying that usually meant they needed something Maya wasn't providing. "I know, babies," she whispered, tears of frustration mixing with fever chills. "I know you need more than this. I'm trying." She just managed to get them corralled in their play area when exhaustion hit her like a physical blow. Maya sank onto the couch, her head falling back against the cushions as she fought to stay conscious. She should lock the door, she thought dimly. Betty always reminded hotel guests to lock their doors, even in a safe place like the Moonlight Inn. But standing up felt impossible, and the babies needed watching, and her head was pounding so hard she could barely think straight. "Just for a minute," she murmured, closing her eyes. "Just rest for 1 minute." She didn't know how long she'd been out when voices penetrated the fog of illness. Male voices, coming from her living room, speaking in hushed tones. "Burning up. How long has she been like this?" "Betty said she sounded awful this morning, but you know Maya. Stubborn as a mule about asking for help." Maya tried to open her eyes, tried to make sense of what was happening. 2 men in her apartment, talking about her, while she lay helpless on the couch. Every alarm bell in her system should have been screaming, but her body felt disconnected from her brain. "Laura, Leo, come here." That voice she recognized. Danny Patterson, sweet Danny who fixed things and made terrible jokes and would never hurt anyone. But who was the other man? They're scared, the stranger said softly. Look how they're watching her. Maya forced her eyes open to find Danny crouched beside the couch while another figure moved around her apartment with quiet efficiency. The second man was tall, broad-shouldered, moving with careful grace as he gathered scattered baby toys and straightened cushions. Dante. What? Maya's voice came out as barely a whisper. What are you doing here? He turned at the sound, and she saw something flicker across his features: relief, concern, something else she couldn't identify through the fever haze. Betty asked me to check on you. Your door was unlocked. Maya tried to sit up, but the world tilted dangerously. I'm fine. You need to leave. You're burning up with fever and can barely lift your head. Dante's tone was matter-of-fact, but gentle. I'm not leaving you alone like this. I don't need help. Yes, you've mentioned that. He moved to the kitchenette, opening cabinets with the confident motions of someone who knew exactly what he was looking for. Where do you keep the thermometer? Bathroom cabinet, Danny answered when Maya just stared. I'll get it. Maya watched in growing confusion as the two men moved around her apartment like they belonged there. Danny returned with the thermometer while Dante filled a pot with water and set it on the stove. Dada. Laura had spotted Dante and was pulling herself up on the play area's mesh walls, reaching for him with obvious delight. Hello, sweetheart, he said softly, but didn't approach. Instead, he looked to Maya. May I? The question was so gentle, so respectful of her boundaries even in her current state, that Maya felt tears prick her eyes. They're scared, she whispered. They don't understand why I'm not playing with them. Dante moved to the play area and crouched down, letting both babies grab his hands through the mesh. Mama's not feeling well, he told them seriously. But she's going to be okay. Dada. Leo babbled happily, apparently reassured by Dante's presence. I should go, Danny said, checking his watch. Bar's getting busy. But Maya, if you need anything at all, you call downstairs, okay? Maya nodded weakly, not trusting her voice. After Danny left, the apartment fell into an oddly comfortable quiet broken only by the twins' soft chatter and the sound of water beginning to boil on the stove. 102.8, Dante said, reading the thermometer with a frown. When did you last eat? Maya tried to remember. This morning? Maybe yesterday? Right. Soup first, then medicine. I don't have any soup. You do now. Maya watched in amazement as Dante moved around her tiny kitchen with surprising competence. He opened a container she didn't remember buying, chicken soup that smelled like heaven, and heated it on the stove while simultaneously keeping up a quiet conversation with Laura and Leo. I don't understand, Maya said when he brought her a steaming bowl. Why are you here? After what I did last night. Dante settled into the chair across from her couch, close enough to help if needed but not so close as to crowd her. You were sick and alone with two babies. Where else would I be? I humiliated you. In front of everyone. You were protecting yourself and your children from what you perceived as a threat. His golden eyes met hers steadily. I respect that, even if it hurt. Maya's throat tightened with something that had nothing to do with the flu. I was horrible to you. You were scared. He paused, watching her struggle with the soup spoon. Can you tell me about him? The man who made you so afraid. The question was asked so gently that Maya found herself answering before she could think better of it. Ricardo. The twins' father. He was charming. Successful. Everything I thought I wanted. And then I got pregnant, and he showed me who he really was. Maya set down the spoon, her appetite gone. He used my love for Laura and Leo against me. Made me believe I was nothing without him, that I'd never be able to care for them alone. Dante's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He hurt you. It wasn't a question, and Maya found herself nodding. Not where anyone could see. He was too smart for that. But the threats, the psychological games, he broke me down piece by piece until I almost believed I deserved it. You got away. I ran. When the twins were 3 months old, I took what I could carry and disappeared. Maya looked toward Laura and Leo, who were playing contentedly in their pen. He said he'd find us, that he'd make sure I never saw them again if I tried to leave. So I've been running ever since. That's why you're scared of me. Maya nodded miserably. You're successful, powerful, kind to my children. All the things Ricardo was, at first. And I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to show me your real face. Dante was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those penetrating golden eyes. What if this is my real face? I don't know how to believe that. Then don't. Not yet. He stood, moving to check on the twins. Belief takes time. Trust has to be earned. But Maya, I need you to understand something. What? I would never hurt you or your children. Not ever. And I would never let anyone else hurt you, either. The conviction in his voice made something crack inside Maya's chest. Before she could respond, Leo started fussing, reaching up from the play area with demanding arms. He's tired, Maya said, struggling to sit up. They both are, but they fight their afternoon nap when they're upset. Let me. Dante lifted Leo from the play area, and the toddler immediately snuggled against his chest with a contented sigh. Laura watched this development with interest, then held up her own arms. Up. Up. It's okay, Maya said when Dante looked to her for permission. She'll scream if you don't. Soon Dante was sitting in Maya's armchair with both babies draped across his chest like living blankets. He hummed softly, something wordless and soothing, while his large hands rubbed gentle circles on their backs. Maya watched in amazement as her chronically restless children melted into sleep, their breathing evening out as they surrendered to exhaustion. Dante continued humming, his own eyes drifting closed as the twins settled completely. How did you do that? Maya whispered. They never go down that easily. Children respond to calm, he said without opening his eyes. They can sense when someone is safe. Are you? Safe? Dante's eyes opened, meeting hers across the small room. For you and them? Always. Maya wanted to ask more questions, about his past, his job, the mysterious donations that seemed to follow in his wake. But the fever was pulling her under again, her eyelids growing heavy despite her desire to stay awake and watch this impossible scene. Sleep, Dante said softly. I'll watch them. You can't stay here all night. Watch me. Maya's last coherent thought was that she should protest more, should maintain some kind of boundary. But exhaustion and illness won out, and she drifted into the first peaceful sleep she'd had in months. When she woke, pale dawn light was filtering through her curtains. Maya's fever had broken sometime during the night, leaving her weak but clear-headed for the first time in days. She could hear soft voices from the living room, Laura's happy babbling mixed with a deeper rumble she recognized. Maya padded to the doorway on unsteady legs and stopped short at the sight that greeted her. Dante was still in her armchair, but now both twins were draped across him like sleepy puppies. Laura had her head on his shoulder, tiny fist tangled in his shirt, while Leo sprawled across his lap with the boneless abandon of toddler sleep. Dante's dark hair was mussed, his expensive clothes wrinkled, and there were small handprints on his shirt that looked suspiciously like baby food. He'd stayed. All night, he'd stayed and watched over her children while she slept off the worst of her illness. As if sensing her presence, Dante's eyes opened, immediately alert despite having spent the night in an uncomfortable chair. How do you feel? He asked quietly, careful not to wake the babies. Better. Much better. Maya's voice was still hoarse, but the crushing fatigue had lifted. You stayed. I said I would. But you slept in that chair all night with 2 babies on top of you. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. I've had worse nights. Maya stared at him, this mysterious man who'd appeared in her life like some kind of guardian angel. He looked rumpled and tired, but utterly content with her children sleeping on his chest. There was something about the picture they made together, something that felt dangerously like family. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. For staying, for taking care of them, for..." She trailed off, not sure how to finish. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. Even when I poured whiskey on your head." Dante's smile widened slightly. "That was good whiskey. You have excellent aim." Despite everything, Maya found herself smiling back. "I'll buy you a new shirt. I'd rather you didn't pour anything else on me. I'll try to restrain myself." They looked at each other across the quiet apartment, something shifting in the space between them. Maya felt the walls she'd built so carefully beginning to crumble, brick by brick. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop running. Chapter 7. Maya stood in her own doorway like a visitor, afraid to move too quickly and disturb the impossible scene before her. Dante Blackwood, mysterious customer, whiskey connoisseur, and apparently the most patient man alive, was sleeping in her second-hand armchair with her children draped across him like they'd been doing it their whole lives. In the soft morning light, he looked younger somehow. Less intimidating. The sharp edges that made him seem so dangerous were softened by sleep and the presence of two small bodies that trusted him completely. Laura had somehow worked her tiny hand inside his shirt collar, while Leo's face was pressed against Dante's neck, his breathing slow and even. Maya tiptoed toward the kitchenette, hyper-aware of every creaking floorboard. She needed coffee. She needed to process what had happened. She needed to figure out how to thank a man who'd spent the night caring for her children when she'd been too sick to function. The refrigerator door squeaked as she opened it, and Maya winced at the sound. Her pitiful food stores looked even more embarrassing in the harsh light of day: half a carton of milk, some leftover takeout that might have been safe to eat a week ago, and the remnants of baby food jars that constituted her grocery budget. "Good morning." Maya spun around to find Dante watching her, golden eyes alert despite having spent the night in what couldn't have been a comfortable position. The twins were still asleep, but he was careful not to move too much as he spoke. "I'm sorry," Maya whispered. "I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't. I don't sleep deeply." He studied her face with the kind of attention that made her feel exposed. "How do you feel?" "Better. Much better, thanks to you." Maya gestured helplessly at the scene before her. "I don't know how to thank you for this. For staying, for watching them, for what? For not taking advantage of the situation. For not making me feel like I owed you something." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "Ricardo would have used a night like this against me for months. Reminded me constantly how helpless I was, how much I needed him." Dante's expression darkened. "I'm not Ricardo. I'm starting to figure that out." Leo stirred against Dante's chest, making soft snuffling sounds that meant he'd be fully awake soon. Laura followed moments later, blinking owlishly as she tried to figure out why her pillow was warm and breathing. "Dada!" Laura's delighted shriek could have woken the dead. She scrambled to sit up on Dante's lap, tiny hands patting his face as if to make sure he was real. "Dada! Dada!" Leo joined the chorus, bouncing with excitement. Maya's face burned with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry. I keep telling them you're not their father, but they don't listen." "They're 18 months old," Dante said gently, helping Laura steady herself as she stood on his legs. "They don't understand complex relationships. But it's inappropriate. You're not their father, and I don't want you to feel like they're your responsibility." Something flickered across Dante's features, too quick to interpret, but it looked almost like pain. "What if I wanted them to be?" Maya's breath caught. "What?" "Nothing. Forget I said that." Dante stood carefully, settling both babies on their feet. "You should eat something. Build your strength back up." Maya watched him move around her tiny kitchen with the same competence he'd shown the night before. How did he know where everything was? How could he find ingredients in her bare-bones pantry that she didn't even know existed? You don't have to cook, she said, settling on the couch where she could keep an eye on the twins. I can manage. Maya. His tone was patient but firm. Let me help. There was something in the way he said it that made her arguments die in her throat. She watched in amazement as he somehow created pancake batter from ingredients that shouldn't have been able to become pancakes, humming softly while Laura and Leo played with their blocks nearby. Where did you learn to cook? She asked. Necessity. I travel a lot for work. Hotels get old after a while. What kind of work requires that much travel? Dante paused in his stirring, and Maya caught a glimpse of something guarded in his expression. Business consulting. Corporate restructuring. It's not very interesting. Maya had the distinct feeling he was being deliberately vague, but before she could press further, the smell of pancakes distracted her. When was the last time someone had cooked for her? When had anyone taken care of her instead of the other way around? 20 minutes later, they were sitting around her tiny table eating what might have been the best breakfast of Maya's life. The twins were contentedly destroying their cut-up pancakes while chattering in their incomprehensible toddler language, and Maya found herself relaxing for the first time in months. These are incredible, she said, taking another bite. How did you make pancakes from basically nothing? I had some supplies delivered while you were sleeping, Dante admitted. I hope you don't mind. Your cabinets were a little sparse. Maya's fork stilled halfway to her mouth. You had groceries delivered? In the middle of the night? I know people. What kind of people deliver groceries at 3 in the morning? Again, that guarded look crossed his features. The kind who owe me favors. Maya was starting to realize there were depths to Dante Blackwood that she hadn't even begun to explore. But before she could ask more questions, Leo threw a piece of pancake that landed squarely in her hair. Leo. Maya reached for the sticky mess, but Dante was already there with a napkin, gently extracting the pancake from her tangled curls. You missed a spot, he said softly, his fingers brushing against her temple as he cleaned away the last of the syrup. The touch was gentle, platonic, but it sent heat racing through Maya's system anyway. When was the last time someone had touched her without wanting something in return? When had anyone looked at her the way Dante was looking at her now, like she mattered, like she was worth caring for? Dante, she whispered, not sure what she wanted to say. Dada. Laura chose that moment to throw her own piece of pancake, hitting Dante squarely in the chest. Dada. Dada. I'm really sorry about that, Maya said, moving to clean up the mess. I've tried to teach them not to call you that, but... Don't. Dante caught her hand, stopping her frantic cleaning. Don't apologize for them showing affection. But you're not their father. No, he said quietly. I'm not. But Maya, I've been alone for a very long time. Years of hotel rooms and business meetings and forgetting what it feels like to have someone glad to see you at the end of the day. Maya's throat tightened at the loneliness in his voice. Surely you have family. Friends. I have business associates. I have people who work for me, people who want things from me. His golden eyes met hers. But your children, they see me walk into a room and light up like Christmas morning. They don't want anything from me except attention and affection. Do you have any idea how rare that is? They're good judges of character, Maya said softly. Even as babies, they could sense who was safe and who wasn't. They never warmed up to Ricardo the way they have to you. What does that tell you? Maya looked at him, really looked, taking in the gentle way he helped Leo with his juice cup, the patient smile when Laura tried to feed him a sticky piece of pancake. It tells me I've been an idiot. You've been protecting yourself and your children. There's nothing idiotic about that. Even when I poured whiskey on your head? Especially then. Dante's smile was warm, genuine. Though I have to admit, I wasn't expecting such dramatic flair. Maya laughed despite herself. I have a terrible temper when I'm cornered. I'll remember that. They finished breakfast in comfortable quiet, the twins gradually winding down from their sugar high. Maya found herself stealing glances at Dante, trying to reconcile this gentle, patient man with the mysterious figure who'd haunted her thoughts for months. "Can I ask you something?" she said as he cleared the dishes. "Anything." "Why me?" "I mean, you could have anyone. You're successful, attractive, clearly patient enough to handle children. Why waste time on a broke single mother with enough emotional baggage to fill a warehouse?" Dante paused in his dishwashing, considering the question. "Do you want the honest answer?" "Please." "Because the first time I saw you on that airplane, you were protecting your children with everything you had. No backup, no support, just pure maternal instinct and determination." He turned to face her. "You were magnificent." Maya's breath caught. "I was a mess. You were a lioness defending her cubs. And when that flight attendant hurt you..." His hands clenched into fists before he consciously relaxed them. "I wanted to make her pay for every tear you shed. That's a little intense for a stranger on an airplane." "You were never a stranger to me." Before Maya could process that cryptic statement, a sharp knock echoed through the apartment. Maya frowned. It was barely 8 in the morning, too early for most visitors. "Maya, honey, are you feeling better?" Betty's voice called through the door. "I brought Mr. Blackwood's dry cleaning." Maya's blood turned to ice. She stared at Dante, who had gone very still at the sound of Betty's voice. "Mr. Blackwood's dry cleaning?" Maya repeated slowly. "Maya," Dante started. But Maya was already moving to the door, her mind racing. "Mr. Blackwood." Betty had said Mr. Blackwood's dry cleaning. Not Dante's. Not the customer from table 7. Mr. Blackwood. She opened the door to find Betty holding a garment bag and wearing an expression of dawning horror. "Oh," Betty said weakly. "Oh dear." "Betty," Maya said carefully, "why do you have Mr. Blackwood's dry cleaning?" Well, you see." Betty's eyes darted between Maya and Dante, who had appeared in the kitchen doorway looking resigned. "I may have made a tiny mistake." "What kind of mistake?" "The kind where I forgot to mention that your mysterious customer is actually the owner of this hotel. And the chain. And probably half the businesses in town." Betty winced. "Surprise?" Maya turned slowly to stare at Dante. "You own the Moonlight Inn." "Among other things," he said quietly. "You own the place where I work." "Yes." "You've been my boss this entire time." "Technically, yes." Maya sank onto her couch, the full implications hitting her like a tidal wave. "You own the hotel. You've been watching me work, listening to me complain about management, watching me struggle to pay rent on a room in a building you own." Maya. "Oh God." Her hands flew to her face. "I poured whiskey on my boss. I accused my boss of taking pity on me. I told my boss I didn't need his charity while living in his hotel and working in his bar." "You didn't know," Dante said gently. "Because you didn't tell me." Maya stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "How long were you planning to keep this secret? Were you laughing at me this whole time? The poor single mother who didn't even know she was dancing for the man pulling all the strings?" "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" Maya spun to face him, hurt and anger and betrayal warring in her chest. What was this whole charade about? Dante looked at Betty, who took the hint and quietly excused herself, leaving the dry cleaning draped over a chair. When they were alone, he moved closer, his expression earnest. "I wanted you to know me as a man, not as your employer. I wanted you to choose me for who I am, not for what I could provide. And lying about it was the best way to accomplish that? I never lied. I just didn't volunteer certain information. That's called lying by omission." Maya ran her hands through her hair, trying to process everything. "This explains so much. The anonymous donations, the playground equipment, the way the staff treats you. They all know, don't they? They've been instructed to keep my identity confidential." "Your identity?" Maya laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Who are you really, Dante Blackwood?" What else haven't you told me? Before he could answer, Leo toddled over and wrapped his arms around Dante's leg, looking up at him with adoring eyes. Dada, he said simply, as if the word could solve everything. Maya looked at her son, at Dante, at the remnants of the breakfast he'd made for her family. Despite her anger, despite the revelation that had turned her world upside down, one thing remained clear: this man had spent the night caring for her children. He'd stayed when she was vulnerable, helped when she was helpless, and never once made her feel like she owed him anything in return. Even if he had been lying about who he was the entire time. Chapter 8. 6 months later, Maya Rodriguez stood in the lobby of the Moonlight Inn watching her life unfold in ways she'd never imagined possible. Mama, Daddy's here. Laura's voice carried across the restaurant as she spotted Dante through the large windows facing the parking lot. At 2 years old, she'd become the unofficial announcer of his arrivals, much to Maya's alternating embarrassment and delight. He's not your daddy, Maya said automatically, the protest worn thin by months of repetition. He's Dante. Daddy Dante, Leo corrected from his perch on a bar stool, where he was helping Marcus inventory napkins by stacking them into precarious towers. His vocabulary had exploded in recent months, much like his sister's, and both twins wielded words with devastating precision. Maya had given up correcting them weeks ago. Dante was daddy now, regardless of biology or official paperwork, and the twins had made their feelings on the matter abundantly clear to anyone who would listen. Good morning, beautiful. Dante's voice was warm as he entered through the restaurant's main entrance, carrying 2 coffee cups from the new cafe down the street. He handed one to Maya, his fingers brushing hers in a touch that still sent butterflies dancing through her stomach. You're late, she said, accepting the coffee gratefully. The suppliers came an hour ago, and the new waitress starts today. I had to make a stop. His golden eyes held secrets, but they were good secrets now, surprises and plans rather than hidden identities and mysterious motives. How are the monsters this morning? Daddy. Laura launched herself from across the room with the fearless abandon of a toddler who knew she'd be caught. Dante scooped her up effortlessly, spinning her around until she giggled with delight. Hello, sweetheart. Did you help Mama open the restaurant? I helped. Laura declared proudly. And Leo made a mess. Did not. Leo protested from his stool, then promptly knocked over his napkin tower to prove his sister's point. Maya watched the familiar chaos with a contentment that still surprised her. 6 months ago, she'd been terrified of trusting anyone with her children's hearts. Now, watching Dante effortlessly field questions about breakfast preferences while Leo climbed his leg and Laura showed off her new vocabulary, Maya couldn't imagine their lives any other way. The transition hadn't been smooth. After Betty's inadvertent revelation about Dante's true identity, they'd spent weeks working through Maya's sense of betrayal and his guilt over the deception. But slowly, carefully, they'd built something real on the foundation of honesty and patience. Dante had started by explaining everything: his ownership of the hotel chain, his involvement in the community donations, even his reasons for keeping his identity secret. Maya had been hurt, angry, confused by the implications of dating her boss. But she'd also been forced to confront the undeniable truth that his actions, regardless of his motivations, had consistently shown care and respect for her boundaries. The revelation had actually made things easier in some ways. Maya no longer had to wonder how he could afford expensive dinners or why he seemed to know everyone in town. She understood now that his business consulting involved owning and improving small hotels across the country, that his frequent travel was him running from loneliness in the wake of losing his own family years earlier. Car accident, he'd told her during one of their long talks. My wife and daughter. 5 years ago. I've been moving ever since, couldn't stay in one place because everywhere felt empty. What changed? Maya had asked. Laura called me Dada on an airplane, he'd said simply. And suddenly I remembered what it felt like to be needed. Now, watching him help Leo down from the barstool while simultaneously answering Laura's rapid-fire questions about the ducks they'd seen at the park yesterday, Maya marveled at how completely he'd embraced fatherhood. Not the biological reality of it, but the emotional truth, that family was about showing up, day after day, for the people who mattered most. Mama. Laura had wiggled out of Dante's arms and was tugging on Maya's sleeve. Daddy says we can have pancakes. For lunch? Maya raised an eyebrow at Dante, who had the grace to look sheepish. It's their birthday week, he said defensively. Pancakes are practically a food group during birthday weeks. Their birthday isn't until Saturday. Exactly. Birthday week. Maya shook her head, but she was smiling. The twins' second birthday party was still 4 days away, but Dante had been spoiling them outrageously in preparation. New toys appeared daily, along with age-appropriate books and educational games that somehow managed to be both fun and stimulating. Speaking of birthdays, Maya said, settling onto a barstool while the twins played nearby, Mrs. Patterson called. She wants to know if we need help with the decorations. Tell her yes to everything. I want this party to be perfect. Maya studied his profile as he watched Laura and Leo stack blocks with intense concentration. It's just a birthday party, not a royal coronation. It's their first birthday party as. Dante trailed off, seeming to catch himself. As what? Nothing. Forget I said anything. But Maya had learned to read Dante's moods over the past months, and there was something significant in his hesitation. What aren't you telling me? Can't a man want to throw his children a perfect birthday party without ulterior motives? His children. The casual possessiveness in those words made Maya's heart skip, even as she noticed he deflected her question. Dante. Maya. His tone was perfectly innocent, but his eyes held that secretive gleam again. Before she could press further, the restaurant's door chimed and their new waitress arrived for her first shift. Maya reluctantly shifted into manager mode, though she made a mental note to interrogate Dante later about whatever he was planning. The morning passed in the usual controlled chaos of restaurant operations. Maya had discovered she loved the work, coordinating staff, solving problems, creating an atmosphere where both employees and customers felt valued. Dante had offered her the position after the previous manager relocated, and despite her initial concerns about nepotism, Maya had earned the respect of her team through competence and genuine care for their well-being. The new girls working out well, Betty observed during the lunch rush, nodding toward where Sarah was efficiently handling a table of demanding businessmen. Good instincts. Dante has an eye for hiring, Maya agreed, then paused. Though I suppose I would say that, considering he hired me. Honey, he didn't hire you because he was smitten. He was smitten because you're extraordinary. Betty's tone was matter-of-fact. The falling in love part was just a bonus. Maya felt heat creep up her neck. After 6 months, she and Dante still hadn't defined their relationship beyond taking things slow and seeing where it goes. They spent every day together, he was effectively co-parenting her children, and they'd shared enough heated kisses to prove the attraction was mutual. But neither of them had said the L word out loud. We haven't. Oh, please. Betty's knowing smile was infuriating. That man looks at you like you hung the moon, and you light up like Christmas morning every time he walks in a room. If that's not love, I'll eat my hat. Daddy. Daddy. Laura's excited shout interrupted Maya's stammered response. Come see. Dante emerged from the office where he'd been handling paperwork, immediately crouching down to examine whatever Laura had discovered. Leo toddled over to join the huddle, and Maya watched the three of them with that familiar warmth spreading through her chest. What did you find, sweetheart? Dante asked seriously, as if Laura's discovery was the most important thing in the world. Bug, she announced proudly, pointing to a small beetle making its way across the floor. That's a very nice bug, Dante agreed gravely. Should we help him get outside where he belongs? Yes. Save the bug. Maya watched Dante carefully capture the beetle and escort both twins outside to release it, listening to his patient explanations about insects and habitats. 6 months ago, she'd been terrified of anyone getting close to her children. Now, she couldn't imagine them without Dante's steady presence in their lives. You know what I think? Betty said quietly, appearing at Maya's elbow. What? I think that man's planning something special for Saturday. Maya's pulse quickened. What kind of something? The kind that involves lawyers and paperwork and making certain things official. Before Maya could ask what that meant, Dante and the twins returned, both children chattering excitedly about their bug rescue mission. Mama! We saved him! Leo announced proudly. We're heroes. Laura added, striking a dramatic pose. Yes, you are, Maya agreed, gathering both children into her arms. My brave, bug-saving heroes. Our heroes, Dante corrected softly, and something in his tone made Maya look up sharply. But he was already moving away, claiming he needed to check on something in the kitchen, leaving Maya with the distinct impression that Saturday's birthday party was going to be about more than cake and presents. The rest of the week passed in a blur of party preparations and growing anticipation. Dante was clearly planning something, but he deflected all of Maya's attempts to discover what. The twins, meanwhile, seemed to sense the adults' excitement and ramped up their own energy accordingly. Daddy's being sneaky, Laura observed Thursday evening as they walked through the park after dinner. Sneaky how? Maya asked, though she'd noticed the same thing. He whispers on the phone. And he hides papers. Maybe he's planning a surprise for your birthday. Not for us, Leo said with the matter-of-fact certainty of a 2-year-old. For you. Maya's heart skipped. For me? Daddy loves Mama, Laura announced cheerfully. Gonna make it official. Official how? But the twins had spotted a squirrel and were off, leaving Maya to wonder what exactly they'd overheard and whether 2-year-olds could be considered reliable sources of information. Saturday arrived with unseasonably warm weather and perfect blue skies. The party was set up in the hotel's back garden, with streamers and balloons transforming the space into a toddler paradise. Friends from town mingled with hotel staff, all of them eager to celebrate Laura and Leo's milestone. Maya stood at the edge of the festivities, watching her children hold court among their admirers. They were confident, happy, secure in the knowledge that they were loved and wanted. It was everything she'd hoped for when she'd fled her old life, and more than she'd dared to dream. Beautiful party, a familiar voice said behind her. Maya turned to find Dante approaching, but something in his expression made her breath catch. He looked nervous, which was unusual, and he was carrying an envelope that seemed to hold unusual significance. Dante? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's perfect, actually. He glanced toward the twins, who were currently being entertained by Danny's terrible magic tricks. Can we talk? Privately? Maya's heart began hammering as he led her to a quiet corner of the garden, away from the party noise. The envelope in his hand seemed to glow with importance, and she had a sudden, wild suspicion about what it might contain. Maya, Dante began, then stopped, running a hand through his dark hair. This isn't how I planned to do this. Do what? Ask you something important. He took a deep breath, meeting her eyes with that steady golden gaze that had become her anchor over the past months. The twins call me Daddy. I know. I've tried to correct them, but I don't want you to correct them. His voice was quiet but firm. Maya, I love those children like they're my own blood. I love their stubborn streaks and their terrible taste in television shows and the way they both try to climb me like a jungle gym every morning. Maya's throat tightened. Dante. I love how Leo always has to test gravity with his food, and how Laura thinks every animal needs rescuing. I love that they trust me to keep them safe, and that they light up when I walk in a room. He paused, his expression intensely serious. But mostly, I love that they're yours. Tears were threatening now, but Maya blinked them back. What are you asking? Dante held up the envelope with hands that weren't quite steady. I'm asking if you'll let me make it official. I'm asking if you'll let me adopt them. Maya's breath left her in a rush. Adoption papers? I've been working with a lawyer for months. Everything's ready, all we need is your signature. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. I know it's presumptuous. I know we haven't talked about the future, about what we are to each other. But Maya, those children are my heart. They have been since the moment Laura toddled across a bar to say hello. Mama. Daddy. They turned to see both twins racing toward them, faces sticky with cake frosting and eyes bright with excitement. They launched themselves at the adults with typical toddler enthusiasm, apparently sensing that something important was happening. What's happening? Laura demanded, bouncing on her toes. Are you crying, Mama? Leo asked, reaching up to touch Maya's damp cheek. Maya looked down at her children, these beautiful, perfect little humans who'd given her purpose and shown her what unconditional love really meant. Then she looked at Dante, who'd somehow become essential to their happiness without her even realizing it. Daddy wants to be your daddy for real, she told them, her voice thick with emotion. With papers and everything official. Really? Laura's shriek of delight could probably be heard 3 states away. Papers make it real? Leo asked, his small brow furrowed in concentration. Papers make it forever, Dante said softly, crouching down to their level. It means I'll always be your daddy, no matter what. Is that okay with you? Both twins threw themselves at him with enough force to knock a smaller man off balance, chattering excitedly about forever daddies and real families. Maya watched the 3 of them embrace and felt something settle into place in her chest, a sense of rightness that had been missing her entire life. Yes, she whispered. Dante looked up from his armful of excited toddlers. Yes? Yes to the adoption. Yes to making it official. Yes to forever. Maya's smile felt like it might split her face in half. Yes to family. The twins cheered as if they understood the magnitude of what had just happened. From across the garden, Maya could see Betty wiping her eyes while Danny fumbled with what looked suspiciously like a camera. There's something else, Dante said, standing while maintaining his grip on both children. Something I should have said months ago. What? I love you, Maya Rodriguez. I love your strength and your stubbornness and the way you'd fight the world to protect these babies. His golden eyes were steady, certain. I love how you make pancakes into a food group and how you sing off-key in the shower. I love that you gave me a family when I thought I'd lost mine forever. Maya's tears were flowing freely now, but she didn't care. I love you too, she whispered. So much it terrifies me. Good terrified or bad terrified? The best kind of terrified. The kind that means something matters enough to be scared of losing it. Dante kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise, while Laura and Leo cheered and the party guests applauded from across the garden. When they broke apart, Maya felt like she was glowing from the inside out. So, she said, accepting the envelope from Dante's hands. When do we make this official? Whenever you're ready. There's no rush. Maya looked at her children, their children, and thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a nightmare flight to a new beginning, from fear and suspicion to trust and love. It had taken 2 years to build this family, but it had been worth every moment of uncertainty. I'm ready now, she said firmly. Let's go sign some papers and make forever official. As they walked back toward the party, surrounded by the people who'd become their chosen family, Maya marveled at how perfectly imperfect their life had become. Laura was already planning Daddy's next birthday party, while Leo was more interested in whether official papers meant more pancakes. It wasn't the life Maya had planned, but it was better than anything she could have imagined. Sometimes the best families weren't born, they were built, one patient moment at a time, by people brave enough to choose love over fear. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, your family started with crying babies on an airplane and a stranger kind enough to say, that was unnecessary. Epilogue, 5 years later. The chaos was magnificent. Maya Blackwood stood in the doorway of the Moonlight Inn's private dining room, watching her 7-year-old twins orchestrate what could only be described as organized mayhem. Laura was directing a group of children in an elaborate game that seemed to involve equal parts tag and interpretive dance, while Leo had appointed himself the official guardian of the birthday cake, a responsibility he took very seriously. No touching, he announced to a hopeful 5-year-old who'd been eyeing the frosting. Birthday girl gets first piece. The birthday girl in question, 3-year-old Laura Blackwood, clapped her hands with delight from her perch in Dante's arms, her dark curls bouncing as she surveyed her domain. She'd inherited her father's golden eyes and her mother's stubborn streak, along with an alarming talent for wrapping adults around her tiny finger. "Dada, cake now?" Laura asked with the kind of wide-eyed innocence that had convinced Dante to buy her a pony the previous month. Maya was still negotiating the return of said pony. "After lunch, princess," Dante said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Mama worked very hard on the food." Maya smiled at the familiar negotiation. 5 years of marriage had taught her that Dante Blackwood, successful businessman, hotel magnate, and respected community leader, was completely helpless against his daughter's requests. Sons too, for that matter. Leo and his best friend had managed to convince him to build an elaborate treehouse that was probably bigger than Maya's first apartment. "The food can wait," said a familiar voice behind her. "Those babies grow up too fast to waste time on schedules." Maya turned to find Betty approaching with a wrapped present and her trademark knowing smile. At 78, the former hotel manager had officially retired but remained the family's honorary grandmother and chief meddler. "Betty, you've already given her enough presents to open a toy store." "A great-grandmother's prerogative," Betty said firmly, though they all knew Laura wasn't her biological great-granddaughter. Biology had become irrelevant in their chosen family long ago. Besides, this one's special. Maya raised an eyebrow as Betty handed over a small, carefully wrapped box. "What did you do?" "Just a little something I've been saving." Before Maya could investigate further, a small hurricane in the form of 4-year-old Marcus Patterson, Danny's son, crashed into her legs. "Aunt Maya. Aunt Maya. Uncle Dante says there's gonna be fireworks." "After dark," Maya confirmed, steadying the excited boy. "And only if everyone eats their vegetables." Marcus wrinkled his nose but nodded solemnly. In the 5 years since Dante had officially adopted Laura and Leo, their family had expanded to include an extensive network of chosen aunts, uncles, and cousins. The hotel staff had become extended family, their children growing up together in the kind of community Maya had never known she wanted. "Mama." Laura appeared at her side, slightly out of breath from her directing duties. "Mrs. Chen wants to know if it's okay for the little kids to have juice." "Of course. And tell her thank you for helping supervise." Laura nodded and darted away, her sense of responsibility inherited directly from her mother. At 7, she was already showing signs of the same fierce protectiveness that had defined Maya's early motherhood, though thankfully without the fear and desperation that had once driven it. "She's going to run the world someday," Dante observed, appearing beside Maya with Laura still in his arms. "Probably. The question is whether the world will survive it." They watched their oldest daughter marshal the younger children with the efficiency of a seasoned general, and Maya marveled at how confident Laura had become. The scared, clinging toddler who'd once been afraid of strangers was now a natural leader who made friends wherever she went. "Down, Dada." Laura wiggled in Dante's arms until he set her on her feet. She immediately toddled toward the growing pile of presents, her birthday dress, a frothy pink confection that made her look like a fairy princess, trailing behind her. "Present time?" she asked hopefully. "After lunch," Maya and Dante said in unison, making Laura giggle. The meal passed in the comfortable chaos of extended family gathering. Maya looked around the table at the faces that had become dear to her, Danny and his wife Sarah, the former waitress who'd won his heart, Marcus and his younger sister, Dr. Patricia Chen and her teenage twins, Mike Patterson and his ever-expanding brood of grandchildren who called Dante uncle, despite no blood relation. This was what family looked like, Maya thought. Not perfect, not always quiet, but full of love and laughter and the kind of acceptance that meant everyone belonged. "Speech," someone called out as they finished the main course, and Maya felt her cheeks warm as all eyes turned to her. "I'm not good at speeches," she protested. "Mama's shy," Leo announced helpfully, making the adults chuckle. "I'm not shy, I'm just overwhelmed," Dante said softly, understanding as always. "It's okay. I'll do the speech." But Laura had other ideas. She stood up on her chair, despite multiple reminders about sitting safely, and raised her juice cup in a perfect imitation of the adults' dinner toast she'd observed. "Happy birthday to me," she announced with absolute confidence. "And thank you for my family." The simplicity of it brought tears to Maya's eyes. "Thank you for my family." As if their unconventional, chaotic, perfectly imperfect family was something to be grateful for rather than something to be explained or defended. From the mouths of babes, Betty murmured, wiping her own eyes. The present opening that followed was everything a 3-year-old could want: books and dolls and art supplies and enough clothing to outfit a small army. Laura approached each gift with the serious attention it deserved, thanking each giver with the polite manners Dante had somehow instilled in all 3 children. Betty's gift came last, the small wrapped box that had intrigued Maya earlier. "What is it, baby?" Maya asked as Laura carefully peeled away the paper. Inside was a delicate silver locket, obviously antique, with an intricate pattern engraved on the front. Laura held it up to the light, fascinated by the way it caught the afternoon sun. "It was my grandmother's," Betty explained. "Passed down through 3 generations of strong women. I always planned to give it to my daughter, but..." She shrugged. "Life had other plans. So I'm giving it to Laura, with the hope that she'll pass it on to her daughter someday." Maya's throat tightened. "Betty, we can't accept something so personal." "Of course you can. Family is family, honey. Doesn't matter how you get there, just matters that you show up." Dante carefully fastened the locket around Laura's neck, where it looked both precious and slightly ridiculous against her birthday dress. But Laura wore it like a crown, clearly understanding that she'd received something special. "Thank you, Grandma Betty," she said solemnly, and Maya had to excuse herself to the kitchen before she completely dissolved into tears. She was standing at the sink, ostensibly rinsing dishes but actually trying to compose herself, when Dante found her. "Hey," he said softly, sliding his arms around her waist from behind. "You okay?" "I'm perfect," Maya said, leaning back against his chest. "Just overwhelmed." "Good, overwhelmed." "I know." His lips brushed against her temple. 5 years ago, did you think we'd be here?" Maya considered the question seriously. 5 years ago, she'd been terrified of trusting anyone, convinced that happiness was temporary and that love always came with conditions. Now she stood in her own restaurant, surrounded by chosen family, watching her children grow up secure in the knowledge that they were wanted. "No," she said honestly. 5 years ago, I thought the best I could hope for was survival. I never imagined this. This? Home. Real home. The kind where people show up just because they love you, where children feel safe enough to be confident, where..." She turned in his arms to face him. "Where a scared woman on an airplane could become someone's wife and mother and find out she was capable of so much more than she ever knew." Dante's smile was soft, understanding. "You were always capable. You just needed someone to see it. We needed each other." "Yeah. We did." They stood together in the kitchen, listening to the sounds of their life. Children laughing, adults talking, the comfortable noise of family being family. Through the doorway, Maya could see Laura showing off her locket to anyone who would look, while Laura and Leo had apparently decided the birthday party needed a dance contest. "I have something for you too," Dante said quietly. "It's Laura's birthday, not mine. It's our anniversary. 5 years since you signed those adoption papers." Maya's breath caught. In all the party preparation, she'd forgotten the significance of the date. 5 years ago today, she'd legally made Dante the father of her children and officially started the life she'd never dared to dream of. "I didn't get you anything," she said, suddenly stricken. "You gave me everything." Dante reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. "But I wanted to give you something too." Inside was a simple silver bracelet with 3 small charms, a tiny airplane, a crescent moon, and a heart with "family" engraved across it. "The airplane for where we started," Dante explained as he fastened it around her wrist. "The moon for the moonlight inn, where we figured it out. And the heart for what we built." Maya's tears were flowing freely now, but she didn't care. "It's perfect." Just like this crazy life we've made. Mama. Dada. Laura's voice carried from the dining room. Come see. Uncle Danny's doing magic. They returned to find Danny performing increasingly ridiculous magic tricks for the assembled children, his sleight of hand hampered by the fact that Marcus kept trying to help by announcing how each trick was done. That's not magic, Daddy, his daughter Sophie informed him seriously. That's just sneaky. The best magic is sneaky, Danny replied with mock solemnity. Maya settled back into her chair beside Dante, watching their extended family laugh and tease and love each other with the easy comfort of people who belong together. Laura climbed into her lap, sticky fingers from cake frosting immediately attaching to Maya's dress, but she didn't mind. Good birthday, Mama? Laura asked sleepily, the excitement of the day finally catching up with her. The best birthday, baby. Good family? Maya looked around the room, at Laura teaching the younger kids a clapping game, at Leo deep in serious conversation with Mike Patterson about something involving trucks, at Dante helping Danny clean up the remnants of his magic show while Betty supervised from her chair. The very best family, she confirmed. As the afternoon stretched toward evening, guests began to drift away with promises to return soon and invitations to various upcoming events. The extended family would gather again next weekend for Leo's soccer game, and the weekend after that for Laura's piano recital, and the weekend after that for someone's birthday or anniversary or simply because it had been too long since they'd all been together. This was how love worked, Maya had learned. Not in grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but in the steady accumulation of ordinary moments that added up to extraordinary lives. When the last guest had left and the children were finally, blessedly asleep in their beds, Maya and Dante sat on the back porch of their house overlooking the garden where Laura's party had been held. The moonlight glowed softly in the distance, and Maya could see the night desk clerk moving around behind the lobby windows. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For being patient. For not giving up when I was too scared to trust you. For seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. Thank you for letting me stay that night when you were sick, Dante replied. For not throwing me out when you discovered who I really was. For giving me a second chance at being a father. Thank you for making my children feel safe enough to call you Daddy before I was brave enough to call you mine. They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. Somewhere in the distance, a plane passed overhead, its lights blinking steadily as it carried passengers toward their own unknown destinations. Maya thought about the woman she'd been on that flight 5 years ago, terrified, alone, convinced that she had to face the world by herself. She'd been so focused on protecting her children from potential harm that she'd almost missed the gift of the man sitting beside her now. Do you ever wonder, she said, what would have happened if we'd been on a different flight? If you'd been in a different seat, or if I'd chosen a different destination? No, Dante said without hesitation. Because I don't believe in coincidence anymore. I believe in fate, and family, and the way the universe sometimes gives you exactly what you need when you're brave enough to accept it. Even when it comes disguised as a crying baby on an airplane? Especially then. Maya smiled, fingering the bracelet on her wrist, airplane, moon, heart. The story of how they'd found each other, built a life together, created something beautiful from the broken pieces of their separate pasts. As they headed inside to check on their sleeping children, Maya caught sight of her reflection in the hallway mirror. She looked like a woman who belonged somewhere, who was loved and cherished and valued for exactly who she was. It had taken her 31 years to become that woman, but she'd gotten there. And it had all started with a stranger who'd looked at her tears and said, that was unnecessary. Sometimes the best love stories began in the most unlikely places, with the most imperfect people, in the midst of the most ordinary chaos. Sometimes they took years to unfold, requiring patience and faith and the courage to believe that happiness was possible. But when they worked, when two broken people found each other and decided to build something beautiful together, the result was magic of the very best kind. The kind that lasted forever.